Now, let's come to the British arrived in the Indian subcontinent in 1600, something like that. And in Nepal, the British made the first contact with the people of Nepal in 1776 when Prithvi Narayan Shah attacked the king of Kathmandu Valley, and that I think perhaps Jayasthiti Malla was the king at the time, and he asked for help to East India Company in India, and in that process, the English-speaking people first made contact with the people of Nepal. And what I'm talking about is the British gave us the tea, the cricket, and the English language to the Indian subcontinent. And today I'm interested in telling you the story of tea and the cricket and the English language. Most importantly, I will be talking on uh, elaborately on the English language. Then now we realize that these are not foreign elements. We take them as part of our cultural everyday life. However, these have become part of our cultural heritage, although these were foreign elements. All these three things, tea was foreign element, cricket was foreign element to us, and the English language was also a foreign element to us. But nowadays, we never think that they are anything foreign. We have taken them just part of our life, our daily activities. In the following few slides, I show you the pictures of some popular cultures of the region, because we have different understanding of the culture. And these pictures represent some general understanding of culture that we common people understand what exactly we mean by the culture. Here, I take it from Nepal, and this is what we call Bailo dance, and all of you, most of you, you are clear with it. And this is how we celebrate, and this is part of our culture, that is what we say. And this is very common here in Nepal, and this is especially a cultural program that we enjoy on the day of Diwali. And similarly, I move to next one. Here, I took the cultural program. I take it from Manipur, the Indian state in the northeastern part of India. And this is what they call Laiharawa dance. Means to make the god happy, the people dance, young beautiful girls and beautiful dancers, they dance beautifully. And it is, in one sense, it is the invitation to the cosmic divine, so that we can have peace in our life. Then I move to, here I have a dance, the photograph of a dance from Sri Lanka, and this is the harvesting time, and this is what they are enjoying it. And these are the colors, these are the beauties that South Asia, especially the Indian subcontinent, has all the beauties that we have. And I have here from Pakistan, and this is the cultural representation of Pakistan. Here you have different kinds of things, people dancing, people have religious site there, and not only the young people, but also the old, and they have very typical cultural life. And this is what we understand by culture in our South Asian context. But for us, for academicians, the students of cultural studies, culture is a little bit more than all these kind of things that we normally think about. It is something more. For me, culture is what a large number of people do collectively for an extended period of time. And whatever we have seen in the previous slides, this is also true with them. A large number of people did, and these cultural practices, these activities have been passed on from generation to generation. But in the same time, in the modern time, we have been doing lots of things, not only like that, but these have become cultural aspect of our life, like sipping bed tea. Every morning we start with the tea, and we have so many tea drinkers in South Asia, in the Indian subcontinent, that no other part of the world has such a big, large number. We are the largest tea consumers And that happened in last 70 years, I think. And we live in the cities and we commute to office from home, and a large number of people are doing this. And this is also the part of our cultural life today. And we have shopping malls in the cities, in urban areas. We go there, we buy things, we eat, and we have entertainments and all other kind of things. We send our children, especially in urban areas, to English medium schools, and this is also the part of our culture. I understand culture in that way. So it is a very broader term than the normally people used to understand. So in this sense, tea has become an integral part of our cultural life today, and cricket represents our cultural behavior. We have seen lots and lots of craze for the cricket, and the English language determines our cultural activities today. And see here, we have this forum. Do you think it would have been possible without English to organize these kind of things? So English has become our, not only it is something that we use to speak or teach English, but it has become our cultural part of our cultural activities. And this is our typical. Now let me tell you the story of tea in the subcontinent. This is a typical Pakistani tea. There they call it masala tea, and tea comes with all that kinds of masala and all that kind of cookies and biscuits. And tea in South Asia has a special quality. Uh, just tea is not enough. We should add sugar. We should add lots of milk there, and we have to boil it for quite a long time. And I'm sure that we love this kind of tea, and this is what we find in every corner of South Asia today. And it's not always difficult to find a tea shop whenever you move to, whether you are in Lahore or whether you are in Kathmandu or Delhi or Colombo. Tea is always common with you. But here is an interesting, here I got it etymological map of tea. I got it from the Facebook wall of Tafsir. Tafsir is from Karachi and he had joined today. And this is interesting that two things, it has two etymology, and Chinese were the first where tea has originated. And one important thing, why it is so interesting is that here in the map you can see there is a place called Minnan, and it was a seaport, perhaps in the 16th century AD, something like that. And that tea, which was exported from that seaport, reached to Australia, reached to Southern Africa, and to a more part of the Europe. And that part where tea was exported from that particular seaport, we have got something like tea. And tea that was exported from the Silk Road, where we have a word something similar to chai or chia, that is what. And this is what is here represented with this yellow color. And the reason is that in Mandarin Chinese, tea is something very close to the word chai. And in Minnan, that seaport, the tea was called te, and that is what the word has been taken away. And one interesting thing, the entire South Asia, we have chai, but only in Tamil, it is te neer. In Tamil, te means chai and neer means water. Tea, water put into the tea, that is ready to, that is what we find in the teacup. So this is what the story of tea, that it spread throughout the world. But what happened with tea? There was a Chinese monopoly on the tea, and British wanted to grow tea in India because British didn't rule Chinese, but they were ruling India and they were colonized India. And they thought that it would be good to grow tea. And there are stories that many Britishers, they used to come to India just because tea was there during the colonial period. And there was a person called Robert Fortune, a British spy, and he slipped to China. And the objective was that he wanted to procure tea plants so that he could bring them and plant here in India. And it was somewhere time in 1840s. But the tea plants that he brought didn't survive in Indian climate. Then tea was discovered accidentally. A British biologist wandering in the wilderness of Assam discovered tea. He boiled and he tasted and it sounded good. But tea plantation has a lot of bad things as well, because during the colonial period, because of tea, lots and lots of exploitation was made. The forest land was deforested and tea was planted there. And even Gandhi, MK Gandhi also said that Indian tea stimulated our revolutionary zeal, because during the Indian national movement, tea worked to unite the people of India. But before decolonization, that means before 1947, tea was not a favorite drink for the people of subcontinent. Although tea was grown there for about 100 years in India, but actually what happened, it was something different, because Britishers, they grew tea, and every leaf of the tea it was grown in India was exported to other part of the world. That's why the local people of Indian subcontinent didn't have any opportunity to enjoy the tea. It became popular only after 1947 when Britishers left the subcontinent. Now, then, what happened? Tea has caused lots of exploitation as well. Then very often we see these tea leaves are grown by very, very poor people. There is lots of exploitation. And by the time these cups of tea come to our house, and we always find the smell of British colonialism. And now let's move to the story of cricket. And when we talk of cricket, cricket was brought to the subcontinent sometimes in 1700 by the Britishers. And nowadays, if you have here, I have a photograph of India and Pakistan, and it also causes lots of clashes also. But even though whether rickshawala or whether panwala or anywhere, whether you're walking in the streets of Kathmandu or walking in the streets of Delhi or Calcutta or Dhaka or Lahore or Islamabad, everybody talks about cricket. We never think that cricket was something alien to us. What happened? Oh, just a minute. It has some problem. It didn't move. Just wait. Okay. Okay. I think it's okay. Just a minute. Okay. It's okay now. Then first cricket match in India was played in 1721. At the time, cricket was the game for the British and the elite class princes. That's why we have Ranji Trophy and all other kind of things. And another important thing is that the Indian subcontinent grabbed the opportunity in such a nice way that many of the countries of South Asia today are far better than the Britishers themselves, and they have defeated them in many of them. So cricket is just the very interesting and part of our everyday life. Cricket reflects and transcends India's diversity. And when we talk of cricket, there is no any kind of differences that Indian subcontinent has so many languages, so many cultures, but cricket binds all the people. We all get crazy towards cricket, World Cup, and other kind of things. It unites our caste, our creeds, our colors, our cultures of everyone, and it makes one as a whole. Okay, now let's come to the story of the English language, and especially English language education. And we all know that Macaulay's notorious Minute of 1835 determined somehow the educational system of South Asian countries or Indian subcontinent. Doesn't matter whether it is Nepal or Bhutan or Pakistan or Afghanistan or even India. And the main idea was that he wanted to create a class of person, Indian in blood and color, but English in taste, in opinions, in moral. And what he said was another important thing, that a single shelf of good British European library was worth the whole native literature of India and Nepal. And this is what Macaulay said, and all the people of South Asia accepted this one, and we moved towards that. And this is what's happening. And this is the beginning of the modern education system in India, in the subcontinent. Then I think I'll do like this. This is better. The hegemony is a struggle for dominance, a situation where English is instrumental for inequality, discrimination, and communication. This is what scholars think. English not only places the domains of our languages, but also our mental structure. That means it gives us a different kind of thinking. Those people who are English educated, and they think that they are superior to other. And I think this morning, Dr. Fack was also talking about that. We have been talking about multilingualism, but we are moving towards one language. That is, earlier it was Nepali, but nowadays English is taking that place that Nepali already had. And hegemony is a process, and it is not a kind of accomplishment that we could think of. Now, everywhere there is a craze for English. As an example of the craze that we have for English is an example of hegemony. And there are some argument that the follower, those who are Anglicists, they think that English is beneficial. English provides access to English. Access to English secures our life better. We can have better job. And another is that neutrality. English is a neutral language. By that we mean it is nobody's mother tongue. So if we make Maithili as the national language of Nepal, then people would not be happy. But if we go for English, there is not a big problem. Then that's why English is taught in Janakpur, or English is taught in Mahakali, or English is taught in Kathmandu, and people don't have any problem with that. And English is also an instrument for the upward mobility. That is what we talk of. And we say that English offers higher social status. That means if you know English, your social status in the society will be higher. Then South Asian elites means, by elites we mean those who are rich, who are powerful, those who lead and enjoy the highest number of resources in the region. They take it. They take it passport for prestige and our profession and everything. If you have English language, you will have better social prestige in the society, and you have also chances to get better, higher paid or white collar jobs and that kind of things. So English is used to grab the opportunities and remain on the board. That means you can go on continuing like that. Now, let's come to how we conceptualize the cultural hegemony. This is the person, Gramsci, Antonio Gramsci, an Italian scholar who worked for the who conceptualized hegemony, and according to him, a struggle over meaning, identity, and political power. And this is what he's conceptualizing hegemony. And dominant antagonistic groups. And there is always a struggle for power between the groups. And one group wants to subjugate, liquidate the other group, and there is always a struggle. And sometimes one group becomes more powerful and the other comes under the subjugation. And in one sense, it is a kind of cultural and intellectual domination. And English is a very great instrument for doing these kind of things, not only in the Indian subcontinent, but also throughout the world. And those who are subjugated, they get convinced that they are better off with this kind of domination. And this is what happened in Indian subcontinent during the British rule, and even after the British Raj, this is what's happening. And let's come to now. I think you see the picture, and this is what I think. I took it from the post-colonial pictures, and this is what we mean a good example of hegemony. You have to surrender everything. What you have is there. Everything is, you have to surrender. You don't have any kind of independence, freedom. And this is also somehow true with, for example, these kind of things are represented in British literature very often. And I take it just like the example of Robinson Crusoe and Friday in Daniel Defoe's novel. And Friday was made to do whatever Robinson Crusoe liked. And the Macaulay's system of education made us something like that. We always say that West is better, West is good, and that kind of things. And Macaulay's education, what did it do to the societies of the South Asians, Indian subcontinent? It made that it imposed alien way of knowing. That means our indigenous knowledge system was completely destroyed. And something similar that Professor Loitel was also talking yesterday. And another thing is that our learners, by learners means school children, university students, and scholars, they have been detached from their histories, their cultures, and their needs and other kind of things, because we have been imposed that foreign culture, foreign language, learning a language from also gives you a different social perspective. Then our ontologically, we have deformed intentions, and that is not conducive for our native. We are moving away from our own identity. And at the last, what happens? Such kind of education maximizes dehumanization and exploitation of our own. Then, now, this is what I take the terminology from Mugi. Mugi is an African scholar, and he used to write in English first, but later on he thought that writing in English, he was not only physically colonized, but also colonized mentally and culturally and spiritually. And that after that, he started writing in his own language, in his own African mother tongue. And what he said was, this is what, here is a picture, and this is the picture of colonial, the impact of colonial English. And you see there is a judge, and in the other side, there is a woman, their body is used, and there are also women and children who do not have anything to eat, and they're almost starved, and there is a person, and person who is just noting down something. And this is what the Western education system forgot to understand the problems that we have. And this is still created by this colonial elitedom. And let's try to understand. Colonial education created an army of colonial army. That is what Nugi's term, he says. And it has a cultural erosion. We forgot our history. We forgot our cultural practices. We started looking at the old men and their sayings as they do not know nothing. And we just produce our own argument that we are good, we are Western educated, we have seen the world, we have the internet information in our fingertips, and these old women and men do not know anything. And we have made English as prerequisite for education. Without English, the knowledge of English, our children do not graduate. That whatever good they are in Nepali or in Urdu or in Hindi or in Marathi or Bangla, but for getting the university degree, they should have English. And because because of English, they have been the imposition of culture on their thinking, in their thought, and there is always a threat. We people are living in a very diverse situations. Our diversity is our strength. We speak various languages, we cook different kinds of foods, we have different ways of cultural festivals. That's why everywhere we are with different colors, and there is no any kind of boredom, and we enjoy, we talk, our food, our dress, our dances, everything is there. And these cultural diversity are always threatened by the monolingual thought that comes from English type of education. Then now let's come here. Uh, this colonial elitism is an instrument of hegemony to our cultural hegemony, particularly. What happens there? It was the construct of the British Empire or colonial construct, let's say. They construct the elitism through soldiers. They had the soldiers, they have the clerks, they have the machinery, and they created the class of, that is what, the class of a person Indian in blood and color, that Macaulay's minute and the education that was used in the Indian subcontinent after 1835. And one of the reasons of the current status of English hegemony is because the discourse, there is a discourse of English that it has the neutral status. English is nobody's language, although it is difficult to. We spend almost 20 years of our lifetime to learn English, but still we are not sure how good we are at. Are we able to express our thoughts in writing after 20 years of studies? And another thing is that, for example, after the decolonization, many nations opted for English. And this is what we see in after when the countries after the Second World War, when they started getting independence, they didn't have one language that can bind the country together. India is a good example. Even Pakistan is also a good example. Nigeria in Africa is a good example. There, exactly what happened? They didn't find any language there, so English was used as one of the official languages of the nation for governance, for education, for court, and all other kind of activities. Then colonial elitism continued even after the independence. That means after the decolonizations. And evidence for its continuation is that English has a very special position in the social life, social as well as cultural life of the Indian subcontinent. No matter whether you are living in Kathmandu or Chennai or Lahore or Karachi, there is no problem, but the situation is almost same everywhere. And there are certain reasons why this continuation, even after the 70 years, 7 decades have passed, even after that, one thing, again, I'm using Gramsci's term, this is what he calls organic intellectuals. Just like colonial elitism, organic intellectuals are the intellectuals created by English education and the colonial education. Let's say not English, but colonial education. And these are the product of elitism. Organic intellectuals created a false consciousness. That is what Gramsci talks about. That means in our case, this false consciousness is the neutrality of English. But how can, as a linguist, I never think that a language will be neutral. Finally, the discourse subjugated the discourse of locals, the discourse of the colonial education, and the discourse of organic intellectuals, the discourse of the colonial elitism dominated the discourse of local people, and we have been forced to follow the false consciousness created by this discourse. And now I use the terminology, the concept hegemony of hegemony by Day. Day talks about now the time of Gramsci has come to an end. It is Gramsci is dead now. He no more. His ideas are dead. He is no more in use. And then the idea is that the construct of colonial elitism functions to establish the ideology of its creator. In our case, those elites, those who are the bureaucrats, who are in the judges, who are the university professors, all these are the examples of colonial elitism or Gramsci's organic intellectuals. And these people establish the ideology of the creator. Here, the creator is the colonial education system, that is the British, the West. And these kind of things create a kind of cultural hybridity. And here I'm using the term used by Homi K. Bhabha from his book 1994. And what he talks about is when two cultural patterns live together in the same geographical location for a longer period of time, they get muted to each other. Some features of mother culture and some from the alien one. They get hybrid, they get mutated, and a new kind of cultural construct emerges. And this is what is happening today. And following day, I call this stage hegemony of hegemony. Then, now, cultural mutation that leads to hegemony of hegemony is achieved by creating a class, an offspring of cultural mutation. And that means these doctors, medical doctors, university professors, engineers, highly educated people, bureaucrats, all these are the offsprings of this cultural mutation. And this class, although not many, remember, to rule, lots of people are not needed. When British was ruling the Indian subcontinent, then about at the time around 1800, the total population of the Indian subcontinent, undivided India, was about 300 million. And in 1800, only about 36,000 British were there to rule the 300 million people. So just like that, today also, this offspring of cultural mutation, that means colonial elitism and organic intellectuals, the number is not many. They consist of higher bureaucrats, professors, people working in NGOs, and politicians. And these capture all the social organization. They control, and they control these social organizations means education system, ministries, and all religious as well as cultural organizations. And they designed everything to their ideology. And they are judicial systems, legislature, government machinery. All these are examples of social organizations. And in the following few slides, I discuss how this works in education. We cannot continue everything, judicial system, legislature, and government machinery, but our concern is here with how does it work with the education. Let's see. Then one way of doing that is to do that one. one way of solving this problem is one important thing that we understand that English plays a great role for that kind of things. And now I say, what's the use of in I say still we teach Shakespeare, we teach Rudyard Kipling, we teach Jane Austen, but how many books we transcribe by the people, writers from our own region in our English curriculum? And one important thing is that if we had to overcome this hegemony, we have to introduce native varieties of English because we cannot live without English. Today, it is very difficult. So, one important thing is that we have to bring the national varieties. Suppose, for example, English in Nepal, English in Pakistan, English in India, or Indian English, or Bangladesh English, or Sri Lankan English. We need to bring this kind of varieties of English so that we can teach our own cultural practices without letting them go to Washington or London. And but one important thing is that our policymakers who designs the syllabus, our professors, most of them are the product of colonial elitism, and they didn't see the authenticity in national varieties. In one of the conference there in Jaipur last time, I was encountered by a senior professor, and he asked me, should we include Chetan Bhagat in our syllabus? Then I said, what's the wrong with that? He said, his language is not authentic. He just translates Indian ways. For example, in Hindi, they say, Hamare alag alag ghar hote hain. Then he says, we have different houses like that. And what's wrong with that? And we have to find authenticity in our own way of language. And our curriculum are designed to meet the goals of policymaker. We never thought that what kind of language we need for our student, what is the demand in the market. But this is not decided from the need analysis of our student or what does the nation exactly need. Then teachers, uh, I think someone, maybe Dr. Fack was talking in the morning, teacher is an agent. But in practice, in reality, I don't see our teachers are agent. How much freedom you have to select the content of your syllabus that you are teaching. Your syllabus is already designed by the policymakers, and in that way, the content is already fixed, and you are just an intermediary between the curriculum and the student. You are just like a driver. You do not design the truck or the bus or the car. You're nothing more than that. And teachers function to, that's why we teachers do not teach the students, but just pass on the message of the policymakers that we have been asked to do. And this is the situations, and this is common in all the in all the nations of the Indian subcontinent today. Then, teachers, particularly from universities, what do we do in the universities? We bring the theories from the West, we reproduce that one, and we think that we have been teaching. Have we ever thought about that? We have so much diversity and we can teach, we can develop our own theories that can solve our problems. How many of you have thought about that? That all those teachings of language teaching methods, all of them were developed in the West, either in UK or in US. But are these methods suitable for our context? For what purpose our children need English here, and for what purpose children there in UK, they need it? And we think that we go to UK, come back with a degree, and we think that we are the great and we know everything. Is that possible? So we teachers, university teachers, these are the things that we are doing. And we still think that British RP or Standard American English is the model to teach. But how many of us speak British RP or Standard American English? If we don't speak that particular variety, how can we teach? And why should we have that objective? Why shouldn't we move to that? We have to teach the English in Nepal or Nepalese English, whatever you call. I don't want to use the term English. It's a derogatory term. It's not a respectable way. English language in Nepal is as respectable variety of English as in any other part of the world. It is good. It has a system. It is linguistically a complete in itself. It is nothing defect. It is not a defunct one. Then neither we speak these varieties nor we can teach. If I don't speak the British variety, RP or standard American English, I can't claim myself that I will teach this particular variety. Instead, it's better go for English in Nepal variety or Nepalese English. And as a result, but another important thing, how many of our students do they need the British variety, RP variety or standard American variety of English? How many? What is the percentage of going? Should we teach English because some of the elite students, the best brains, that they go to US or UK? Should we teach for that? Or let's say these are the 10%. What about, shouldn't we think about the 90% of students will remain here in Nepal throughout their life and become teachers like you and me? Then, so now, prescribing native variety of English is an example of hegemony. When you prescribe a textbook or the structure or the grammatical norms of British variety or American variety, then this is why does this happen? Because it is an example of the hegemony, and it is also cultural hegemony. Teachers have no choice but to teach the prescribed text, and that's why I don't see the teacher agencies in teacher is not there in a country like ours. Teachers are just passive. That's why we love to get a book, textbook, and we remain idle throughout our life because we don't have any challenge. There is someone to prescribe the text, and they also write a manual and how to teach. They have everything instructed, and if everything instructed, and if you go in your own way, then you are not following, you are not true to the authority, and your job is always there in stake. Why should you do that? Just follow what you have been asked to do. Don't go beyond that. And you are a good teacher. And when you retire, you go with certain perks to live and to pay your medical bill in your old age. What do you do? Nothing else. And this kind of practice has made us think in a different way. And we remain idle throughout. All our teachers, majority of them have become idle. They didn't do what my teacher taught me. I get that particular book or that notebook that I got from him, and I go with that same. In most of the cases, we came from that kind of education system. So, and the result is that, and whose duty is that one? Should we remain silent for all the time? Should we always follow that we are hegemonized? And one important thing, our weakness is that as teachers, we fail to convince our policymakers that we speak a different variety of English. Our variety is as respectable as standard American English, or as standard, as good as the British RP. We fail to convince our policymakers. And we kept on reproducing theories. We do not develop our own theories to understand this, to solve our problems, but we brought them from US, from the Western Europe or somewhere else. And these theories do not have any direct relevance to our context. Do we need exactly the communicative approach, communication in English, that we have been taught up to class 10? Earlier, we were at least asked to read how Bhairav saved Ram Singh's life, something like that. We were taught at least that, and our students have some reading practice, but even that was also, and these kind of things are going on. Never try to find out why our learners need English. Do our learners need to talk in English, speak in English? Is that only the thing? Or do our students need English because they have to read ideas in the books or articles, and so that they will be able to communicate that with the outer world in English? So reading and writing is, I think, for me, is more important. Then, now how is that everything is modeled? And I bring the theory of orphan hypothesis, orphan hypothesis that that is what we call linguistic determinism. And no language is neutral. Hoff was working in an indigenous language called Hopi in America, and he found that the way that you speak a language that determines your worldview as well. So when we are taught English or a variety of British English or American English, then the thing we also start thinking like Americans or Britishers, and those who and we are creating another caste. We already have four castes in Varnashram in Vedic tradition, and now we have created another caste system, those English literate and English illiterate. And this is what important caste system that we have. So I again go back to this scholar Fanon, Franz Fanon, a Caribbean scholar. Later on, he spent his life in Northern Africa. He says, to speak means to be in a position to use certain syntax. When you speak, you use the grammatical structure, and that grammatical structure or syntax of that particular language is determines the way that your structure, mental structure as well, and you grasp the morphology in that way. So that means, above all, to assume a culture. That means when you model your mental structure in that way, then what you do also, you also have that culture of that particular civilization, and you cannot be free from yourself. And Fernando, working in Southeast Asia, says, in Southeast Asia is not afraid of British culture, but Western habits of thinking. The way that we think like an Englishman or a German is much more dangerous than just speaking the English language. Then this happened, and in Indian context, it is much worked on this particular topic. I get from some ideas from Pattanayak, writing in 1969, distinguishes one for the effective participation of the governmental process. This is what the Indian psychology is there. If you have the knowledge of English, you can better participate in the process of government, in judiciary, in legislative, in every kind of thing. And then if you do that once, you're following the intellectual aristocracy. Earlier in the medieval time, aristocracy was a different meaning. But today's world is we are guided by, we are dominated by, subjugated by the intellectual aristocracy, and we have to follow them. And this is very much clear in our present time and during the Corona time also. Language planning policies have destructive impacts because of the language policy developed. All our language policy developers, they are high bureaucrats, and they all are the product of colonial elitism. And they always want to reduce the variation, because reduction in variation is always good for the political bureaucrats and things like that. Then, in spite of all multicultural diversity of India, English was given much broader space, and all other languages, the local indigenous languages, are always subjugated. Then I can come back to Penacook. Penacook was a professor of English in Hong Kong University, and later he moved to Australia. And in Tanzania, what happened? The bureaucrats failed to bring a good concrete language policy, and they have to choose two languages: Swahili, the local, and English. And they went for English, and Swahili was subjugated. And these are the issues in countries like China, Malaysia, where pro-English policies are also still going on there. And situations as discussed above in India and Tanzania create structural and cultural inequalities between English and other languages. And English-speaking countries deliberately promote such inequalities because these are done for political and economic gains and other kind of subjugation policies. Then let's come to South Asian context, that is Indian subcontinent. Projected no other language exists, as if no other languages. We have very rich culture of many languages, Tibeto-Burman languages, Dravidian languages, Indo-Aryan languages. But even today also we think that there is no language exists and we go for English. And English is projected as basic skill in the 21st century. That is what we say. And we university teachers have three choices as proposed by Bourdieu in his book, 1986. Doing work that is commissioned by those in power. That means those who are in power means those who design the syllabus, curriculum. Just follow them, forget everything, don't think of any creativity. This is one option we have. Another option is remaining ensconced in an esoteric ivory tower, or you just follow them and you just live your life in daydreaming, doing nothing. This would happen, good one, that one. Or another way is you have to fight against that, fight for and maintain academic freedom and become an autonomy, develop your own autonomy, and you try to go addressing the issues. So which one you want to go, and that makes you what kind of teacher you are. And one of the dominant discourse today is English has the neutral, culturally it is neutral, but is that the truth? No, language remains culturally neutral because language comes with the culture, and because language is the part of the social system, that is what we call the culture. And this discourse allies the impact of, and when we go with that kind of thing, then we we feel the less impact of English in our cultural life, and we conceal the performance of English in cultural space of indigenous communities and language. But we understand that language determines our social behavior, the way that we think, the way we work, because first we think and then do. And if you have English language also creates not only your other structure, linguistic structure, but mental structure as well. Then today, English is not a single entity, but we have Englishes. We say, we do not call English as a single entity, but we have varieties of Englishes. So we have a journal, and you might have been aware of that great scholar, Buzzer Cultural, who talks of the three circles of English today. And this is, and other scholars, I often go for Snyder, that there is a cultural nativization. English has come to us. English has been with Nepal, in Nepal with Nepalese for more than 250 years. In these 250 years, English is not an alien. English is not a foreign. We have nativized it culturally, and it has invaded our own cultural practices. If you see the books written by scholars in Nepal, or those scholars who are working in, how many words you find, and these are typically from English. What do you call gundruk, or Tizko Darkhane? All these things have been abundantly used. And now, and this is the way that our local culture has internationalized, globalized, let's say. And we have multilingual context. If it is multilingual context, and we cannot deny the fact that the varieties of English will be different. And we have and when we say that it is our English language, then it is easy to resist the cultural hegemony because we give its ownership and we minimize the inequalities generated by the English type of thing, those elitedom, colonial elitedom, and those literate and illiterate. So if we think that it is our language, then it's also easy to teach because we take it to be our, just like Maithili or Kusunda or something like that. Then development of national variety of English, and we can think that we can see the norms, grammatical style, and all that kind of things we develop, and we have to write our own grammar of English, that is of English in Nepal or Nepalese English. Then bringing national varieties, by national varieties I mean Pakistani English, Nepalese English, Indian English. If we bring these Englishes to our classroom, it makes the class more inclusive, and native varieties exclude native varieties, that means British or American varieties, exclude and they divide the learners. And these national varieties integrate our cultural values, learning that we learn with our own. We can write books about Indian Nepalese culture. We can talk about Pasupati. We can talk about Buddha in our text. Why should we bring all that kind of things from the West? And resist colonial orthodoxy as envisioned by, and that colonial orthodoxy of Macaulay, we can resist that kind of thing. And such ideologies of exclusion have done more harms to mankind than good. History, the stories of colonial and post-colonial have taught us that these kind of things are always dangerous and terrible, and they are very, very wrong. And teaching English through locally developed materials is always is always an advantage. This gives the learners a feeling of ownership. The child learns from his own environment, and learning English will not be a difficult one. And it is culturally inclusive. We can get some text from Tamang, we can get some text from Taro, and we can get some from Bantawa, and we can make our own cultural practices. That is what happening as part of our syllabus, teaching materials. And learners feel English is not imposed by the colonial rulers, but we develop our own syllabus, our own curriculum, and this is what our need is today. And learners develop the feeling that we are the native speakers of the variety that my teacher is speaking, or that he or she is communicating with us, not something that came from the colonial roots like British or American. We have our own phonological or grammatical rules. And if we teach like that, we don't have any problems with learning fricatives, for and fen and pa and pen. That will not be a difficult one for us to understand, and we know that one. Then, so one important thing is that if we use the learners' variety or the national varieties, there comes the voices of our own learners, and learners' voices construct their identity, and this is always inclusive and this is always good. And using learners' variety gives space to their voices. They start speaking, they start creating discourse, interaction, and all that kind of thing, and constructs their identities and representing their cultural values. And our material include the cultural values and practices of local semiotic system. Then, and these kind of things integrate local culture, and even the first language can be used to teach the English. I don't want to use the English as a foreign language or something like that. Better we say English is our additional language. We learn just like one more language. Then what we can do then, though it's not easy, but we have to celebrate our local knowledge, the knowledge that we have created, that our forefathers created. And we have 120 ethnic groups in Nepal, and all these 120 ethnic groups have the history of survival for thousands and thousands of years. Why shouldn't we share that one? And they have knowledge how to fight pandemic, how to fight other kind of natural disaster. Why don't we bring that knowledge to our own generation, our next generation, so that in that way we celebrate our own local knowledge? And doing that kind of things means we are including our ethnic groups to a mainstream development education system that we are envisioning. And for me, local knowledge is not accumulation of beliefs and practices of the past, but product. It is just a product that tells you also the process, how it is get. It is just not a product, but a process. And this helps us to resist the hegemony of dominant discourse and to construct new knowledge, engaging in the context of our history and social practices, our belief system, our religion, our faith, our survival stories, and all that kind of things. Local knowledge shapes our intellectual practice to interpret other knowledge. So one important thing, why it is so important. So once we are equipped with our knowledge system, our local knowledge system. And we have to see the outer world, the world of America, the world of Japan or China or India, from our perspective. The window first we have to create. And we do not have window. Our house is not there because we do not have our local knowledge. Then treat our location. That means I want to tell everyone that there is a location. We have to treat that one. Geography is there. Our geography is our location. Our society, social practices, our political system. And this is what. And one important thing that democracy was given to this Indian subcontinent by the Westerners, especially by the British. But it is not the thing in that way. I don't take in that way. For me, democratic ideals in the Indian subcontinent were developed by resisting the colonialism. And this resistance practices what Gandhi did with nonviolence. Still, we see in the streets of Kathmandu that when there is some kind of uh, disagreement with the decision of the government, we go and we resist, we do band. And this is not the practice of the West, it is the practice. And this is what the hermeneutic stand that I always take with regard to English, hegemony, our education system. Okay, I think that's the end. And I just want to hear, so it is about the culture. Here is a, it is a uh, dance from Sindh, Pakistan. Let's play it and let's see.